I might have just found the holy grail of a fantasy story. Let's dive right into that. I cannot be the only one that has always wanted to see a protag not just be transported or reincarnated into a world, but see the aftermath after that said journey is complete. And what I mean by that is usually when you have these type of stories, when the characters, let's say, teleported or reincarnated or reborn or whatever into a new world, typically, the common story is where the character's there, he lives his life in that story even after he finishes the story, and then he dies in that said world, and that's basically it. Now, there is obviously stories to where the character might be able to go back to his original verse, but most of the time, usually, when you go to a world within these type of stories, it's permanent. That's it. That's just, it's over. But here's the thing. With the start of this story called Overpowered, or Oversummoned, Overpowered, and Over It, as you can see by the title, the MC is oversummoned. And what that basically means is that he doesn't just have one world he's summoned to. Not just 2, not just 3, not just 4, not just 5, multiple worlds he gets summoned to. And we get to see this man actually get to experience that there is multiple worlds out there, a multiverse of different worlds, and they all have their different rules, their different magic, their different themes and stories. It's very clear that the way this story is written, it's kind of a labor of love. It is definitely from a place of a big fan of reincarnated and reborn or transported into another world type stories. Whoever wrote this, for instance, the actual main author of this, they are legitimately a mega fan. You could definitely feel it by the way this is written, because it follows the typical story beats and cliches of an isekai, but it does it in a way to where it feels fresh. And I think that's what makes this really stand out to me, and what, like I said, why I feel like I might have stumbled upon a holy grail of some kind. Now, currently, I gotta be transparent with all of you, there is only 12 chapters out. It is very early on, it's a very short series right now, it's still ongoing, it's very recent, but even still, it has the backbone, the foundation, so to speak, to really build up to an excellent story that honestly can be absolutely engaging, immersive, and jaw-dropping, depending on how the author writes it, because there is so much potential with this story. Now, I don't know if this story is based on, let's say, a light novel, because typically these type of stories can be, like, let's think of Omniscient Reader. That's a very good example. I need to make a video on that, by the way. I might make one tomorrow. But Omniscient Reader is a good example of, like, a series that's turned into, like, a, you know, a webcomic, so to speak, from a light novel. So, I don't know if Oversummoned, Overpowered, and Over It is based on a novel of any kind, but at least what I'm going into, what I see from, like, this story so far, at least from the webcomic, it has so much potential to dive into not just one world, but multiple worlds. And it honestly, it feels so much like Cautious Hero. I don't know how many of you out there have potentially watched Cautious Hero. It was a popular series when it aired years ago, but it's definitely faded in time and memory for a lot of people, which is rather sad. I'm not gonna lie, out of, like, all the main head, like, highlighted, like, isekai reincarnated stories in the last, like, 10 or so years, I would say Cautious Hero is easily in the top 5. Like, if I had to name my top 5, I think everybody knows it would be Mushoku Tensei ReZero. ReZero number 1, Mushoku Tensei number 2. It differs, but I love both of them very much. But besides Mushoku Tensei ReZero, I would probably have Overlord there, and then I would have Konosuba. And then I would get into Cautious Hero. I love Cautious Hero. It's such a good show. And the reason why I'm bringing that up for this is because in Cautious Hero, there is a plot point that is revealed that there is multiple worlds. There is multiple universes and different realms and stuff under attack by demon lords, demon kings, or whatever in those verses. And there's different tiers and rankings to the danger level of those individual verses that, you know, the goddesses assign individuals to. And when I take a look at Cautious Hero, and when I look at this, there definitely is some overlapping similarities to that. Now, there is distinct differences, but I, once again, want to reiterate this, that clearly the individual that is writing this story is a mega fan of this type of stuff, because they know their stuff. They are doing the typical cliche that is, you know, what you would see from these stories, but they're doing it in a very self-aware way that feels fascinating, interesting, using the elements and the, you know, the cliches and the tropes to their advantage to make something relatively work. Now, here's the thing. What is fully the story about? So I guess let's get into that. Obviously, I've set the premise up and hyped it up, but what is the story like? What is going on within it, and what is the main objective currently within oversummoned, overpowered, and over it. So very early on in Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, you get to find out that our MC is a little bit unique. He is someone that is summoned by a goddess to go to a world to be a hero. Typical story beats, as I said. But the thing is he gets summoned to a world, and upon entering into this new world, which is in, Chapter 1, he's instantly removed from that world after a bunch of other heroes get summoned. So to clarify, all these people right here in this room are people that got summoned to this world to be heroes, to some degree. But our MC was summoned to the world with them, but then instantly upon getting there, about maybe 10, 15 minutes later, he was completely summoned out of that world again with another magic circle underneath him, and he was brought back to the goddess. And the goddess is like, wait, weren't you just here? And been very confused, not really knowing what's going on, hasn't really ever seen this before, but the MC starts to get transported to world after world, and this becomes a constant, repeated thing that Chapter 2 covers. Like, he goes into a Frankenstein world, he goes into a world where the demons have taken over, he goes into a world with black magic, he goes into a world where he's basically a vampire demon monster. He goes and ventures into multiple different worlds, and he gets to see this goddess over and over. And the unique thing about this is every time you go into a new world, the goddess is supposed to gift you a power for that associated world. So basically, with him continuously going into new world after new world after new world, it resulted in him building up so many different abilities that he was very overpowered as soon as he got into his final world, and that is where Chapter 3 comes into play. Now, I'm willing to believe that, even though this is still early on, this is not going to be the last world he ever visits, because there is some speculation and theory crafting to be made from Chapter 4, 5, 6, and 7, and onward to imply that he theoretically could teleport to the other worlds that he's been to, and maybe worlds that he's never been to as well, and maybe even go to view the goddess to be able to go to any world that he actually wants to visit. There is some theories there to lead to that direction. I'll get into that in a moment. But the point I'm getting at is that the MC finally, at last, he gets to the world. At least currently he's being able to stick around for a while too, and he is tasked with saving the day like any traditional hero. And the thing is there is a bunch of other heroes that are summoned alongside of him. Some that, basically have barrier conjuration, they have limit breaker, mana affinity, but his blessing is detection. Now this is a very old-fashioned, standard type of category of a blessing or a power given to an MC. Typically, in these type of stories, which, like I said, gets into the tropes and cliches I talked about, typically an MC is given an ability that seems very weak or underwhelming or just not worded to sound very powerful. Let's think of, like, Naofumi from Shield Hero. He is the Shield Hero. He is a guy that has a shield for a weapon. And obviously, if you watch the show, you know how powerful he is, but it doesn't change the fact. When you think of, like, a game or abilities, weapons, obviously people would gravitate towards a giant greatsword, a bow, a staff. Who would grab a shield to use as a main weapon? Not even a sword, just a shield. So it makes sense why, like, that trope has been around for a while. An MC getting an ability that seems very weak on paper, but if they are smart enough to use it, it is incredibly powerful. So the MC gets the ability detection. However, this is where the themes of the story play. Apparently, the people that detected this ability of what he had was only able to detect what he got when he went to this world. That means that the other abilities he obtained from the previous worlds he was in was not on this list displayed. They were not able to know exactly what he came with, what abilities he has, etc. And I'll get all into that in a second, but it's really cool. I do like how it plays with those themes while also letting the reader know he's definitely more than he actually first appears. He's very strong, but he needs to learn how to use his abilities and be able to properly apply them despite even though he's overpowered. Which that gets to the next part. I like how this series, yes, he does have a lot of crazy abilities, but he doesn't feel just straight up broken. Like, he doesn't feel like Saitama level. And let me explain how these limitations come into play. It's stated very early on that he's incredibly weak physically and magically within this world in the middle of the day. And the reason for that is because when he went to one of the worlds that he was transported into, one of the abilities he got was him being a vampire. If anyone knows any form of vampire lore and myths, obviously people know vampires in the day, they're not strong. They usually disintegrate into ash, and if they don't, if it's a different type of lore of vampire, they just can't really use most of their abilities. And that's basically what happens to the MC. That all of his strong abilities, despite how overpowered he potentially is, he cannot use really any of his stuff in the middle of the day. So it effectively neuters him in a way where he doesn't feel so overwhelming that there is no challenge whatsoever. And also telling people you're basically an undead vampire is not something you can really just tell people. I mean, they'll freak out and try to kill you. So it makes a lot of sense why you wouldn't just tell anyone that. He has to keep it a secret on the down lows in the middle of the night. So it leads into an area to where MC might not necessarily be always a goody-goody two-shoes. He could theoretically be dark aligned, so to speak, because obviously when you think of vampires and draining blood and creating ghouls and servants, that's not an ability a hero theoretically has. So, like I said, there is a lot of themes within this story at work that mesh so many different themes and stuff you see from other stories into one, but it flows so well, it feels nice. It's really good so far. I think that the potential and the groundwork of this series is extremely high. I think that it has the high potential to be one of the best stories written in this type of category in a long time. But the question is, will the author be able to land it? Once again, I don't know. I mean, there's only 12 chapters right now, but every chapter I have read has been very good. The artwork as well in question is legitimately amazing. I wouldn't say it is the best artwork I've ever seen, but obviously this is once again still very early on. And if anyone knows how any authors are, especially with manga or even webcomics, when you see the beginning of the story and you look like maybe 80 to 100 chapters later, you see the overall gradual improvement of the artist, and it's always an amazing thing to see when you just see the evolution of the art improving as time progresses, and I'm willing to bet the same thing's going to happen here. So the art's already looking this good already at the beginning. I cannot imagine what it'll look maybe 50 to 100 chapters from now. It'll probably be night and day in terms of the way it appears. I mean, let's think of like Unordinary, that's on, webtoon as well. Unordinary is legitimately, like, you look at the early chapters and then you look at the latest stuff, night and day. Like, you just look yourself. It is crazy how much the art has evolved since then. So, yeah, like I said, I wanted to recommend this story. I recently came upon it, and I want to be honest with you how I came upon it. I saw an ad. Ironically enough, I was browsing YouTube Shorts. I was literally on my phone browsing YouTube Shorts, and I saw an ad for this. And I was like, I wonder, if this is good. Because the ad was a little bit interesting. I like the way it looked and all that. So, sat down to read it, and I'm like, yeah, it's pretty good. So, yeah, I wanted to recommend this this series to you guys. If you are interested, link in the description. Please check it out for yourself. It's pretty good. I don't want to spoil all the plot points, obviously, but there is a lot of good stuff that happens here. There's, I don't know exactly when the chapters release. I would assume weekly, maybe every few days. But, yeah, I do recommend it. It's good. But, okay, once again, link in the description if you want to read this series for yourself. And link to this page here. But I love you guys. Be safe. Stay healthy. Chibi out.